Hollywood's golden age wasn't just about glamorous premieres and Oscar glory. Behind the velvet ropes, ambitious young men made impossible choices, trading dignity for screen time, silencing their truth for a chance at stardom. Some married women they didn't love. Others endured blackmail, secret deals, and studio manipulation. Today, we're exposing 15 actors who sacrificed everything, including themselves, just to see their name in lights. Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson didn't just hide who he was. He became someone else entirely. The studio system turned this truck driver into America's romantic ideal, pairing him with Doris Day while his real relationships happened in shadows. His arranged marriage to Phyllis Gates lasted 3 years, a contract designed purely for optics. Behind closed doors, Hudson lived in constant terror of exposure, knowing one leaked photograph could incinerate decades of work. When he contracted a life-threatening illness in the early 1980s, the truth exploded globally, making him the first major star to publicly face what had been Hollywood's most guarded secret. His death in 1985 didn't just end a career. It forced an entire industry to confront the lies it had demanded from its biggest names. Hudson sacrificed authenticity for fame, and that bargain cost him everything, including the chance to live openly before it was too late. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift brought raw vulnerability to the screen, revolutionizing what masculinity could look like in cinema. Films like A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity showcased his magnetic intensity, but off-screen he was disintegrating. Clift struggled with relationships involving both men and women, unable to reconcile his desires with Hollywood's expectations. The 1956 car accident that shattered his face also shattered what remained of his stability. Studios still wanted him, but only as a damaged version of his former self. He turned to substances to numb the pain of living a fractured existence, where his truth had no place in public. Elizabeth Taylor remained one of his few genuine allies, understanding the prison he inhabited. Clift died at 45, his talent undeniable, but his life a cautionary tale about the cost of suppression. He did anything to stay in the game, including destroying himself slowly, publicly, and tragically. Cary Grant. Cary Grant epitomized sophistication, charm, and unshakable masculinity on screen. Off-screen, rumors about his relationship with fellow actor Randolph Scott persisted for decades. The two shared a beach house during the 1930s, and photographs from that era sparked endless speculation. Grant married 5 times, each union seeming designed to silence whispers rather than fulfill emotional needs. His ex-wives later hinted at complications in their marriages, suggesting Grant's public persona didn't match his private reality. Studios fiercely protected his image, knowing his box office value depended on maintaining the illusion. Grant himself rarely addressed the rumors directly, preferring calculated silence to risky honesty. He understood Hollywood's rules better than most, playing the game with practiced precision. Whether the speculation was accurate or exaggerated, Grant's willingness to marry repeatedly and maintain strict control over his narrative shows how far he'd go to preserve his career. Fame required performance both on screen and off, and Grant delivered Oscar-worthy work in both arenas. James Dean. James Dean burned bright and died young, leaving behind just 3 major films and countless questions. His rebellious image in Rebel Without a Cause made him an icon, but whispers about his private life followed him everywhere. Dean reportedly had relationships with older men in Hollywood, connections that may have helped launch his career. Columnist Hedda Hopper and others in the industry knew more than they printed, protecting Dean while he was useful and alive. His friendship with actor Sal Mineo added fuel to speculation, though neither confirmed anything publicly. Dean's refusal to conform to traditional Hollywood behavior extended beyond his acting choices into his personal life. He was reckless, ambitious, and willing to challenge boundaries that other actors respected out of fear. His fatal car crash in 1955 ended his story before the full truth could emerge, cementing his status as Hollywood's beautiful, tragic mystery. Dean didn't live long enough to face the consequences of his choices, but his legend suggests someone unafraid to risk everything for authenticity and stardom. Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins became forever linked to Norman Bates, the disturbed character in Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. That role defined his career but also complicated his personal life in ways the public never fully understood. Perkins struggled with his orientation throughout his life, undergoing controversial therapy, attempting to change his attractions. He married photographer Barry Berenson in 1973, having 2 children while maintaining relationships with men in private. Colleagues like Tab Hunter later confirmed Perkins's internal conflict, describing someone torn between societal expectations and personal truth. Studios encouraged the marriage, seeing it as protection against rumors that could damage his marketability. Perkins never publicly acknowledged his struggles during his lifetime, maintaining the facade until the end. When he passed in 1992 from complications related to a terminal illness, the full complexity of his life began emerging. He sacrificed honesty for Hollywood acceptance, enduring years of psychological turmoil and failed attempts to become someone he wasn't. Perkins did anything to maintain his career, including marrying and raising a family while living a fundamentally divided existence. Tab Hunter. Tab Hunter was the blonde, all-American heartthrob that teenage girls covered their walls with during the 1950s. Warner Brothers crafted his image carefully, pairing him with starlets for publicity dates while keeping his real life hidden. In 1955, a scandal sheet called Confidential threatened to expose Hunter's arrest at a party raided for alleged immoral behavior. The studio intervened, trading damaging information about another star to bury Hunter's story. This transaction, common in old Hollywood, showed how stars became pawns in a larger game of reputation management. Hunter dated Natalie Wood publicly, a relationship designed entirely for cameras and gossip columns. His actual long-term partner was figure skater Ronnie Robertson, a relationship conducted in complete secrecy. Hunter's film career eventually declined, partly because he couldn't project the effortless heterosexual charm that sustained other leading men. He wrote a memoir decades later, finally telling his truth after the industry no longer controlled his narrative. Hunter traded authenticity for fame during his peak years, understanding that honesty meant unemployment in 1950s Hollywood. Raymond Burr. Raymond Burr built an elaborate fiction about his personal life, inventing dead wives and children that never existed. As the star of Perry Mason and Ironside, Burr's authority on screen required respectability off-screen, so he manufactured it wholesale. His actual long-term partnership was with Robert Benavides, a relationship lasting over 30 years, but hidden from public view. Journalists who interviewed Burr heard detailed stories about his supposed family tragedies, stories he repeated so often they seemed real even to those who knew better. The industry accepted this arrangement because Burr's shows generated massive profits and networks had no interest in complicating their cash source. Burr's willingness to live within an elaborate lie demonstrated the extreme measures required for career survival. His devotion to the deception never wavered, even as societal attitudes slowly shifted during the 1970s and 1980s. Only after his death in 1993 did biographers confirm the truth, revealing the extent of his fabricated personal history. Burr did anything to protect his career, including erasing his real life and replacing it with acceptable fiction that satisfied both networks and audiences. Dirk Bogarde. British actor Dirk Bogarde achieved international acclaim but maintained strict silence about his personal life throughout his career. His partnership with Anthony Forwood, his manager, lasted over 40 years, though Bogarde described him publicly only as a colleague and friend. British press codes during much of Bogarde's career offered more discretion than American tabloids, allowing him greater privacy. However, this discretion came with understood expectations that Bogarde wouldn't challenge publicly or confirm speculation. His roles in films like Death in Venice and The Servant contained subtle suggestions of forbidden desire. Perhaps the closest Bogarde came to indirect acknowledgement. He repeatedly deflected questions about relationships, insisting his personal life was irrelevant to his work. Near the end of his life, Bogarde's memoirs hinted at deeper truths, but never explicitly confirmed what colleagues already knew. He died in 1999, having protected his privacy successfully, but at the cost of never fully being known by audiences who admired him. Bogarde's strategy worked because he operated within systems that rewarded discretion. He did what was necessary to sustain a long, respected career in an unforgiving era. Cesar Romero brought flamboyant energy to every role, most famously as the Joker in the 1960s Batman series. His bachelor lifestyle and refusal to marry sparked decades of speculation, though Romero deflected questions with charm and humor. Studios repeatedly pressured him to enter a publicity marriage, but Romero refused, maintaining that commitment would be dishonest. This resistance was unusual for his era, showing either courage or confidence that his value as a character actor offered protection. Romero escorted glamorous actresses to premieres and industry events, creating the appearance of romantic possibility without actual commitment. Behind the scenes, colleagues knew Romero maintained relationships with men, though he never confirmed or discussed them publicly. His career spanned over 60 years, proving his instincts about self-preservation were correct. Romero avoided the arranged marriages that destroyed other actors' peace, finding a middle path that satisfied studios without requiring complete deception. He died in 1994, having navigated Hollywood's demands more successfully than many peers, though still never fully open about who he loved. Romero did what he had to do, drawing boundaries that protected both his career and some measure of personal dignity. Roddy McDowall started as a child actor in How Green Was My Valley and built a career lasting over 50 years. His connections throughout Hollywood were legendary, photographing fellow actors and maintaining friendships across generations. McDowall never married and never publicly discussed his private life, maintaining discretion that was absolute and consistent. Within the industry, his orientation was considered an open secret, acknowledged privately but never addressed in press or interviews. McDowall's survival strategy involved being invaluable, making himself essential through talent, loyalty, and discretion about others' secrets. He understood Hollywood's currency wasn't just performance, but also knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. This approach protected him from the scandals that destroyed contemporaries, allowing him to work continuously into the 1990s. His death in 1998 prompted tributes focusing on his artistry and kindness, with only subtle acknowledgement of the personal life he guarded so carefully. McDowall did whatever necessary to maintain his position, including erasing his private self from public consciousness. His success proved that in old Hollywood, strategic invisibility sometimes worked better than elaborate deception. Clifton Webb brought sophisticated wit to films like Laura and The Razor's Edge, becoming known for playing cultured, refined characters. His persona on-screen matched his off-screen manner, elegant and precise, which sparked constant speculation about his private life. Webb lived with his mother for most of his adult life, an arrangement that provided both companionship and convenient explanation for his unmarried status. After her death, he shared his home with male companions, relationships never explicitly defined in press coverage. Studios appreciated Webb's professionalism and box office reliability, protecting him from intrusive questions as long as he maintained plausible deniability. His performances often featured characters whose masculinity didn't conform to rugged Hollywood standards, perhaps reflecting comfort with ambiguity. Webb understood the boundaries of acceptable behavior, never confirming speculation, but also never conforming to demands for traditional romance. He worked steadily for 3 decades, proving that certain types of actors could navigate the system without complete submission to its marriage requirements. Webb died in 1966, having protected his privacy successfully, though at the cost of any public acknowledgement of his deepest relationships. He did what was necessary, finding the space between complete honesty and total deception. Sal Mineo broke through in Rebel Without a Cause, playing the vulnerable, intense teenager whose loyalty to James Dean's character seemed to suggest something deeper. His performance earned an Oscar nomination, launching a career that seemed destined for major stardom. However, as Mineo matured, Hollywood struggled to cast him, and rumors about his private life created industry resistance. Unlike contemporaries who married for appearances, Mineo increasingly stopped hiding, attending events with male companions during the late 1960s. This honesty, ahead of its time, effectively ended his mainstream film career, as studios considered him too risky. He shifted to theater, directing and starring in controversial productions that addressed forbidden subjects directly. Mineo's murder in 1976, a random robbery near his apartment, cut short what might have been a remarkable second act. Before his death, he'd begun speaking more openly, suggesting he'd grown tired of Hollywood's demands for dishonesty. Mineo paid the price for refusing to play the game entirely, watching his career diminish as he chose authenticity over access. He did what he could to balance truth and professional survival, but ultimately the industry abandoned him when he wouldn't maintain acceptable fiction. Farley Granger? Farley Granger starred in Alfred Hitchcock thrillers like Rope and Strangers on a Train, bringing nervous energy to complex characters. His good looks made him a natural romantic lead, but his personal life complicated studio plans for his career. Granger had relationships with both men and women, including well-documented connections with choreographer Arthur Lawrence. Studios pushed him toward publicity romances with actresses like Shelley Winters, relationships that generated headlines but little genuine feeling. Granger grew frustrated with Hollywood's control, eventually leaving for European productions, where attitudes were slightly more tolerant. His American film career never recovered from this departure, as studios punished actors who rejected their system. Granger wrote candidly in his memoir about his relationships and the industry pressures he faced. Finally, telling his story decades later, he described the constant anxiety of maintaining appearances, the calculation behind every public interaction. Granger's willingness to eventually walk away showed limits to what he'd sacrifice for fame, though he paid professionally for that choice. He did what was required during his peak years, then refused to continue the charade when it became unbearable, accepting career consequences as the price of honesty. George Nader had the looks and talent for major stardom during the 1950s, appearing in adventure films and television. However, as rumors about his private life circulated, Hollywood opportunities diminished despite his box office success. Nader's long-term relationship with actor Mark Millar lasted over 50 years, an enduring partnership conducted almost entirely in private. Facing limited prospects in America, Nader relocated to Europe, where he found steadier work and greater personal freedom. He eventually shifted to writing, producing novels that achieved modest success while maintaining the privacy that Hollywood would never have allowed. Nader's story illustrates how the industry discarded talented performers who wouldn't conform to image requirements, regardless of their professional abilities. He made the difficult choice to prioritize his relationship and personal peace over continued pursuit of Hollywood fame. Unlike actors who maintained elaborate deceptions for decades, Nader stepped away when the cost became too high. He lived quietly until his death in 2002, having built a life on his own terms outside the system that rejected him. Nader did what he could within Hollywood's constraints, then made the brave choice to leave rather than continue sacrificing his truth for roles. Paul Lynde became a television fixture through Hollywood squares, his sharp wit and campy delivery making him instantly recognizable. His humor often contained coded references that the industry understood, but general audiences didn't quite catch. Lynde's persona was flamboyant and theatrical, characteristics that fueled speculation he never directly addressed. Unlike some contemporaries who married for cover, Lynde remained single, deflecting questions with jokes that acknowledged rumors without confirming them. This approach worked in the context of game shows and comedy, where his manner was part of the entertainment rather than a liability. However, Lynde reportedly struggled with the isolation this strategy created, drinking heavily and battling depression privately. His career thrived because he occupied a specific comedic space where his presentation was acceptable, even celebrated, within strict limits. Lynde never got the film career he wanted, with studios considering him too distinctive for traditional leading roles. He died in 1982, having achieved fame, but not the full recognition his talent deserved. Lynde did what was necessary to work consistently, crafting a public persona that satisfied audiences while keeping his private life completely separate and hidden. These 15 actors understood Hollywood's brutal equation: conform or disappear. Some chose elaborate lies. Others accepted limited careers rather than total deception. A few pioneered early honesty and paid severely for it. Each made impossible calculations, weighing authenticity against ambition, truth against survival. Their choices shaped an industry that's still reckoning with the damage those demands created. Which actor's sacrifice seems most heartbreaking? And here's the real question nobody wants to answer. If you'd been in their position, facing career destruction for honesty, what would you have done differently? Drop your take in the comments, because this conversation is far from over.